If we listen to the mainstream media, I'm pretty sure most of us don't, we'd be told that this individual is reckless, that he's dangerous, that he's divisive, unstable, unfit to lead. Instead of listening to them, let's have a look at what's actually happened since Donald Trump returned to power, and we can let the facts speak for themselves. Because whilst Western leaders, our leaders, they like to hold summits, issue statements and apologise for their very existence, one man has been moving the pieces on the global chessboard very effectively. The start of Israel. But no hand-wringing, no moral paralysis, just clear, unapologetic backing for an ally under existential threat. You've seen arms supplied, strategic support reinforced, and then there was that audacious raid on the nuclear facility. For the first time in years, honest conversations about long-term solutions have actually been occurring. And whether or not you agree with every proposal, the signal is unmistakable. Strength deters. What about Iran? Well, the era of appeasement's definitely over. We've seen sanctions reinstated, oil networks disrupted, terror proxies redesignated for what they are. And the message to Tehran was very simple. You do not get to fund chaos across the Middle East while America looks the other way. And this pressure's worked, because it always has. And this regime we are literally watching day by day, it paralysed as it falls, because it knows that if Trump has said that he's going to do something, he means it. Venezuela. Well, for years we've had Western leaders wringing their hands over what to do about Venezuela as this narco state literally collapsed its population into starvation. Trump didn't say much, he just acted. And Maduro, once untouchable, suddenly wasn't. And that alone shattered the illusion that tyrants are permanent fixtures. India and Pakistan. Now, here we've got two nuclear-armed rivals with a long memory of bloodshed. And once again, escalation was threatening. But behind the scenes, American pressure and mediation helped pull both sides back from the brink. And that's not something that you'll hear on the evening news, because peace doesn't sell. Africa. We've got Congo and Rwanda. And these are regions that were ignored by a lot of different countries unless there's some sort of photo opportunity. Whereas Trump's government went in with quiet diplomacy, engaging without this usual colonial guilt lecturing. No grandstanding, they just went in there and helped to achieve the aims. NATO, okay, so we've got, for decades, America has been paying the lion's share of keeping NATO functioning, whilst all of the European nations have just basically taken advantage. Trump said, no more. Spend your own money on defence or stop pretending that this is a partnership. And all of a sudden, miraculously, all of these European nations, they put up their contribution to 5% of GDP. And this wasn't because he was polite, but because he meant it. And he's done the exact same thing with the US. Let's have a look domestically. Well, mass migration has affected the United States the same as it has the rest of the West. For years, borders were treated there as a racist suggestion rather than a sovereign necessity. Trump reversed that overnight. The refugee pipelines were frozen. He has set an example of how to deal with this. Restricted benefits, restored the border enforcement, and once again, a very simple but obvious truth was said aloud. A nation without borders is not a nation. It's just a holding pen. We've also seen the massive changes in this cultural shift as well. This endless obsession with identity politics, the ritual humiliation of biology, and the ideological capture of all of the schools and institutions. Trump didn't ask permission for this. He didn't apologise. He just drew a line in the sand. And then very quickly you saw that women's sports were back for just women. Children weren't allowed to be political experiments. And the state does not get to re-engineer reality. Same with the green agenda. This great moral crusade that somehow always leaves the normal people colder, poorer and less free. Pulled them out of the Paris Accords. It restored energy sovereignty. And the national interest was placed above this global virtue signalling. Now, some people might call it anti-climate, but others call it realism. And we in Britain really need to get on top of this. You got Ukraine. Here's the part that the media don't like talking about anymore. You see, the US support for Ukraine didn't end. It was just restructured. Allies were told to step up instead of hiding behind the American checkbooks. So the weapons are still flowing over, but they're being sold to the European nations, and they're giving them to Ukraine now. But ultimately, the goal here wasn't an endless war. It was about leverage. It was about achieving an aim of bringing peace back to Europe. And that's the pattern you start to see when you step back. This isn't about chaos or isolation. It's all about leverage. You see, you've got Trump someone who really understands how to use leverage. He's got strength which is backed by action. Lines are drawn and then enforced. Allies are respected, not coddled. And enemies are deterred, never ever indulged. When one man is capable of this level of impact in such a short space of time across continents, cultures and conflicts, it exposes the emptiness of all of the rest of the leaders in the West. The Western leaders who apologise instead of lead, who are literally just managing the decline of their own nations instead of confronting it and doing something about it. And they're confusing moral posturing with strength. Now, you don't have to like Donald Trump. You don't have to agree with him on anything. You don't have to agree with me on everything. But you have to be honest. Compared to this record, all of the other leaders in the world fade into irrelevance. If they were serious about saving their nations, they wouldn't sneer at his leadership. They'd study it. Because the world does not respect weakness, and it never has. But the sleepers are starting to finally wake up to notice this.